Bhagavate Sri Krishna and Sri Aurobindo Part 3. We have completed 2 parts so far on the occasion of Janmastami of Sri Krishna and sesquicentennial, the 150th birthday of Sri Aurobindo. Now we'll end of today this Janmastami occasion of talk with this last episode on this, that is how to be worthy of his presence with us, how we shall make ourselves worthy of his presence with us. Just a few days before Janmastami, a young devotee of Sri Krishna was asking me about Pondicherry visit. Though she knows hardly anything about Sri Aurobindo and the mother, but to add to her ardent aspiration and devotion of Sri Krishna, while discussing about it, I told that I am not too sure if Sri Krishna is physically present in Mathura or Vrindavan now, but in Sri Aurobindo Ashram Pondicherry. His physical presence in the form of his aura is enveloping the ashram constantly with his presence, peace and protection, which a devotee with one's inner eye can see and feel in one's inner being confidently. The question, someone has put some questions where mother has answered taking into account the thoughts and aphorisms of Sri Aurobindo while explaining that it was like that. When will the world change into the model of heaven? And the answer was given. When all mankind becomes boys and girls together with God, revealed as Krishna and Kali, the happiest boy and strongest girl of the crowd, playing together in the gardens of paradise. Then another one, a God who cannot smile could not have created this humorous universe, but he who has seen Krishna know him for a boy fond of play and a child full of mischief and happy laughter. So these are some of the aphorisms which Sri Aurobindo has uttered about Krishna in this manner. And another few things I will take from the aphorisms where it is very nicely explained by the mother. Men are still in love with grief. When they see one who is too high for grief or joy, they curse him and cry, "O thou insensible!" Therefore, Christ still hangs on the cross in Jerusalem. Men are in love with sin. When they see one who is too high for vice or virtue, they curse him and cry, "O thou breaker of bonds, thou wicked and immoral one!" Therefore, Sri Krishna doesn't live as yet in Vrindavan. So someone is asking mother, I would like to have an explanation of these 2 aphorisms. One is on Jesus Christ, another is on Krishna. So mother is answering very nicely. When Christ came upon earth, he brought a message of brotherhood, love and peace. But he had to die in pain on the cross so that his message might be heard. For men cherish suffering and hatred and want their God to suffer with them. They wanted this when Christ came, and in spite of his teaching and sacrifice, they still want it. And they are so attached to their pain that symbolically Christ is still bound to his cross, suffering perpetually for the salvation of man. As for Krishna, he came upon earth to bring freedom and delight. He came to announce to men enslaved to nature, the village where Sri Krishna spent his childhood and where he danced with Radha and the other gopi to their passions and errors, that if they took refuge in the Supreme Lord, they would be free from all bondage and sin. But men are very attached to their vices and virtues. For without vice, there would be no virtue for them. They are in love with their sins and cannot tolerate anything being free and above all error. That is why Krishna, although immortal, is not present at Vrindavan in a body at this moment. Some say Krishna never lived, he is a myth. It is mythological. Mother is answering. They mean on earth, for if Vrindavan existed nowhere, the Bhagavat could not have been written. Does Vrindavan exist anywhere else than on earth? The whole earth and everything it contains is a kind of concentration, a condensation of something which exists in the worlds invisible to the material eye. So what we see a world, it definitely exists somewhere, and that's concentration and condensation of something which exists in other worlds invisible to the material eye. Mother is telling, each thing manifested here has its principle, idea or essence somewhere in the subtler regions. This is an indispensable condition for the manifestation. So what we see today here on earth is always there in other worlds, and it is concentrated and consent to manifest. That is how we could see. Someone has manifested it, that is why it has come. And the importance of the manifestation will always depend on the origin of the thing manifested. In the world of the gods, this is one world and there are the worlds of the gods, there is an ideal and harmonious Vrindavan, of which the earthly Vrindavan is but a deformation and a caricature. The Vrindavan which you see is a deformation and a caricature, this earthly Vrindavan. Those who are developed inwardly, either in their senses or in their minds, perceive these realities which are invisible to the ordinary man and receive their inspiration from them. So Mother is telling, so the writer or writers like Vyasadeva, the writers of the Bhagavat were certainly in contact with a whole inner world that is well and truly real and existent, where they saw and experienced everything they have described or revealed. The story of Krishna is related in the Bhagavad Purana. Whether Krishna existed or not in a human form living on earth is only of very secondary importance, except perhaps from an exclusively historical point of view. For Krishna is a real, living and active being, and his influence has been one of the great factors in the progress and transformation of the earth. Mother has mentioned it in 8th June 1960. Let's go back. Very interesting event when Sri Aurobindo is told he accepts the 4 great events in the history, and according to him, these are 4 very great events in history. The siege of Troy, the life and crucifixion of Christ, the exile of Krishna in Vrindavan, and the colloquy with Arjun on the field of Kurukshetra. The siege of Troy created Hellenian civilization. That means the fall of Troy created Hellenian civilization. Sri Aurobindo has written Iliad, that is one Greek mythological drama. You might be knowing that, and you can see to that also. The siege of Troy created Hellenian civilization. The exile in Vrindavan created devotional religion. For before there was only meditation and worship. Christ from his cross humanized Europe. The colloquy at Kurukshetra will yet liberate humanity. Yet it is said that none of these four events ever happened. Let's leave it apart. Were the meditation and worship of former times the same as those of today? Question arises. Where does this mean the colloquy at Kurukshetra will yet liberate humanity? So Mother is answering one after another. First, the meditation and worship of former times, about that. How it changed when Sri Krishna was exiled to Vrindavan. How it changed. Mother is telling in ancient times, as in our own day, each religion had its own particular kind of meditation and worship. And yet everywhere always meditation is a special mode of mental activity and concentration. Only the details of the practice vary. Worship is a series of ceremonies. It was like that. Worship is a series of ceremonies and rites that are scrupulously and exactly performed in honor of a deity. Here Sri Aurobindo refers to the worship and meditation of ancient India in Vedic and Vedantic times. To that, the exile of Vrindavan, the Lila in Vrindavan of Sri Krishna, infused devotion and love. Then Mother is coming. The colloquy at Kurukshetra is the Bhagavad Gita. Sri Aurobindo considers the message of the Gita to be the basis of the great spiritual movement which led and will lead humanity more and more to its liberation. That is to say, to its escape from falsehood and ignorance towards the truth. From the time of its first appearance, the Gita has had an immense spiritual action, but with the new interpretation that Sri Aurobindo has given to it, its influence has increased considerably and has become decisive. Mother explained it 29 June 1960. The child Krishna had to take refuge at Vrindavan in order to escape from his uncle Kamsa, the tyrant king of Mathura. But we got finally the love which is the essence of this creation from him, and the Ananda and the devotion. Mother has explained all this in the question and answer, volume 10. Now let's come back to a very interesting question being put on to Sri Aurobindo, and how Sri Aurobindo has answered without any reaction to it. Someone has, X has put some question and say Y is waiting eagerly to see what you say in reply to X's questions of tonight. So the question is, I have wondered why you made your cases equal to ours. Or one devotee is asking that why you made your cases equal to ours to Sri Aurobindo. Did you ever suffer from desires, passions, ignorance, attachment, etc. as we do? Sri Aurobindo is answering. We have had sufferings and struggles to which you are mere child's play. I have not made our cases equal to yours. I have said that the avatar is one who comes to open the way for humanity to a higher consciousness. If nobody can follow the way, then either our conception of the thing which is that of Christ and Krishna and Buddha also is all wrong, or the whole life and action of the avatar is quite futile. Christ, Krishna and Buddha, Sri Aurobindo is uttering like an avatar, including himself, in this question and answer, which was on 7th March 1935, volume 35, on Sri Aurobindo letters on himself and the ashram. Then Sri Aurobindo is answering in that letter. X seems to say that there is no way and no possibility of following, that the struggles and sufferings Sufferings of the avatar are unreal and all humbug. There is no possibility of struggle for one who represents the divine. So if someone is divine or represents the divine, he has no possibility of struggle or suffering. That is what is X's opinion. He has written to Sri Aurobindo, and Sri Aurobindo is telling him that way. Such an idea makes nonsense of the whole idea of avatarhood. There is no reason in it, no necessity of it, no meaning in it. The divine, being all powerful, can lift people up without bothering to come down on earth. Sri Aurobindo is telling it is only if it is part of the world arrangement, if part of the world arrangement which is going on now like a turmoil, it is only if it is part of the world arrangement that he should take upon himself. If the world arrangement itself take upon himself the burden of humanity and open the way that avatarhood has any meaning, then avatar sitting from there or just coming here can change everything without any effort. That's what Sri Aurobindo is mentioned. I'll tell a little bit about the similarity of lights of Sri Krishna and light of Sri Aurobindo, how it is equal, because they were all one. Sri Aurobindo and Sri Krishna were one absolutely in all forms. How it is we can understand from the lights as it is explained by Sri Aurobindo himself in the Letters of Yoga. The lights indicate the action of certain forces. Indicated by the color of the light, whitish blue is known as Sri Aurobindo's light or sometimes Sri Krishna's light. Whitish blue is Krishna's light or mind. Deeper blues often indicate light from the higher consciousness. There are two pale blues, one which is whitish blue and is known as Sri Aurobindo's light. The other quiet blue, which is that of the higher consciousness just above mind. Well, I will tell that in this last couple of days and today, we have taken quite a few important acquaintance of Mother and Sri Aurobindo with Sri Krishna, completely physically, and so many deeper incidences where Sri Krishna has descended completely in Sri Aurobindo. Needless to say, they became one in the last century itself, which we have witnessed. Some of them has witnessed personally. Whoever has seen Sri Aurobindo has, as if he has realized the divine. So finally, by knowing Sri Krishna from the Mother and Sri Aurobindo, what we ought to be to this occasion of Janmastami, and equally Sri Aurobindo's 150th birthday, are well explained again through the image which I am going to tell now. One image which we have seen, all of you have seen. The cowherd Krishna is grazing the cows, driving the herd of cows. Where Krishna is driving the cows as a cowherd boy for grazing them in the field. This would make us know how to become worthy of their presence with us. By someone has put a question, sweet mother, I think it is in the aphorism also, transform the animal into the driver of the herds. Let all thyself be Krishna. So someone has asked the meaning of it. Then mother is answering, oh, that is an image. So you can imagine that image. And from that image the cows are there and mother is telling the animal. That's all the instincts of the physical being. The needs of the physical being and all the habits, all the impulses, all the movements of the physical being, the need for all the movements of the physical being, the need for the food, the need for sleep, the need for activity, whatever the activity we are doing mechanically. Indeed, all that constitutes the animal part of the being. And then Sri Aurobindo gives the image of Krishna, whom he describes as the driver of the herds. And when the image of Krishna is coming, he is the driver of the herds, which is only an image. This means that it is the divine consciousness which takes possession of all the activities of the physical being and directs and guides all those activities, all its needs, which controls and governs all the movements of the physical animal in man. Sri Aurobindo uses what could be called in Indian mythology, taking Krishna as the symbol of the divine and the hearts as the symbol of the animal instincts and animal needs of man. So cows symbolizes the animal instincts and animal needs of the man. So instead of being one of the animals of the herd, first of all, instead of being one of the animals of the herd, you become the one who leads the herds and governs all their movements. Instead of allowing them to dominate him, instead of allowing the herds to dominate the herd cowherd boy, one is bound in ordinary life, one is bound to all these activities of the physical life, all the needs it represents, the need for food, sleep, activity, rest, etc. Well, instead of being an animal, that is one subjected to these things and obliged to submit to them, one becomes the driver of the herd from whom Sri Aurobindo calls Krishna. That is, the divine who takes possession of all the movements of the being and guides and leads them in accordance with the divine truth. Very interesting. The mother has answered it in volume 8 of the question answer. Then comes the transformation, the animal into the driver of the herds. Transform the animal into the driver of the herds. We were in one side, suppose you were the cow, but you want to be the driver. So how to transform the animal into the driver of the herds? When one becomes a divine consciousness, a divine personality, then one becomes the master of all the bodily activities, because one is superior to them. One is not bound to these activities, not subject to them, one dominates them. One has a greater consciousness than that of the individual, of the little separate individual. One can make just a little more progress, and instead of being subject to all these animal needs of the being, one dominates them. But these are not two consciousness, one superimposed on the other. It is one consciousness being transformed to another. Here is the exact complement of that question. Mother is telling, I am asked, what are the characteristic feature of a world personality? So let us understand what is world personality, which will make us really worthy of this occasion. It's a very, very interesting. Let's listen. The most characteristic feature is precisely this change of consciousness. Instead of feeling like a little isolated person, separated from others, one feels one is a universal person, containing all others, and intimately united and identified with all others. Then immediately mother is being asked, how does this person speak and act? Mother is telling, speak? Well, he speaks as everybody does, with his voice, his tongue, his mouth, and with words. If we were to ask what the nature is of what he says, obviously, if he expresses the state of consciousness in which he lives, he expresses a universal state of consciousness and seeing things in a different way from ordinary man. He will express them differently in accordance with what he sees and feels. As for acting, if all the parts of his being are in harmony, his action will obviously express his state of consciousness. I hope the new human race which we have been talking about, I am going to take up this series very shortly, and we have already discussed about in 6 episodes the advent of new race. This is the personality which is growing up in some of the cases in the new race which is coming up. This is the world personality which is coming up. So let us listen carefully how interestingly mother is told. Now there are people who have very decisive experiences in one part of their being, but these are not necessarily translated, or at least not immediately. In the other parts of their being, it is possible that through sadhana or concentration or through grace, somebody has attained the consciousness of a world personality. Through grace, somebody has attained the consciousness of a world personality, or through sadhana or through concentration. But that he still continues to act physically in quite an ordinary, non-descriptive way. because he has not taken care to unify his whole being. And though one part of his being is universally conscious, as soon as he begins to eat, to sleep, walk, act, he does this like all human animals when he comes back. That may happen. So it is again a purely personal question. It depends on each one, on each stage of development. That's why we criticize a lot of people. There is one part he is so much conscious, in another part why? Because he has not unified. But if it is someone who has taken care to unify his being, to identify all its parts with the central truth which he has determined as the object, aim of his life. If to identify all its parts with the central truth, then naturally he will act with a total absence of egoism. You will find in that person total absence of egoism, with an understanding of others, an understanding which comes to him from his identification with others. And so he will act like a sage. But that depends on the care he has taken to unify his whole being around the central consciousness. For example, to take the most positively material things like food and sleep, for him, it is quite possible that if he has not taken care to infuse this central consciousness, as it were, his new consciousness into his body, his need for food and sleep will remain almost the same, and that he won't have much control over them. On the other hand, if he has taken care to unify his being and has infused his consciousness, fortunately and graciously, into the elements constituting his body, well, his sleep will be a conscious sleep and of a universal kind. He will be able to know at will what goes on here and anywhere, in this person or that other, in this corner of the world or any other. And his consciousness, being universal, will naturally put him in contact with all the things he wants to know. Instead of having a sleep that's consciousness and useless, instead of having a sleep unconscious and useless, except from a purely material point of view, he will have a productive and altogether conscious sleep. For food, it will be the same thing. Instead of being a slave to his needs, usually in almost entire ignorance of what he needs, well, he will be perfectly conscious at once of the needs of his body and the means of governing them. He will be able to control his needs and rule them, transform them according to the necessity of what he wants to do. But this requires a great self-mastery and the realization of what Sri Aurobindo says in this last paragraph, that is, instead of remaining below, subject to the laws of nature, instead of remaining below, subject to the laws of nature, dominated by these laws and compelled to submit to them, failing which one is completely unbalanced, one becomes the master. One looks at these things from above, knows the truth of these things, and imposes it upon the body, which should normally accept it without any difficulty. Very nicely we have discussed this time on the occasion of Sri Aurobindo's 150th birthday, the Janmastami. This is the best observance I feel in my life, sharing with all of you my feeling, my sensation with Krishna, and how he is enveloping this with his presence and also lived with us. All this being what I read is being explained in the volume 8 again in the question answer, 5th December 1956. Thank you very much for being with us for these 3 sessions.